Community Beacon, Fridays at 6:30 EST, with your hosts Michaeldseville and Joel Simmons. A channel whose focus is liberty. A place where the lessons discussed and taught will create openings to a more open and freer mindset. A mindset where you may reach the height of your potential and excel. Here are your hosts, Mike and Joel.
What's going on, everybody? We are back for round two, talking about work and life balance. I'm Joel Simmons, and we got over there the real estate king, Michaeldseville. Let's get into it. Take it from here, Mike.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Another week in Community Beacon. Let's get through this housekeeping real quick so we can keep in flow. Remember to like, subscribe, share, hit the notification button. We definitely appreciate you when you do it. When you let us know what's happening. It also helps out with the algorithm, and it's free, so why not? Again, on Mondays, what it takes each and every Monday. I'm dropping the show between 4 and 6 p.m. Go check out what it takes. I definitely appreciate you when you guys check in with there. We're going to keep that going. We're talking a little bit about real estate, talking as well about what's going on in our community and what it actually takes to have an above average business. Next, we got to start with who, brother?
Yes, it starts with me. We've been airing this thing for about a year and a half. We're approaching 2 years. This is definitely season 2. That's crazy. When I just thought about that, how long we've been doing it. I hope y'all like the episodes. You know, my boy Jomer is really like glitzing, glamoring them up. But we got excellent people. I think that we've gone through about 67 different interviews at this point in time. And we've met with people all across the world. So come on, check it out. Learn about what struggles people have overcome in order to get where they desire to be at. And that's not just in business, that's in real life, you know, just different types of struggles for different types of people. So check it out and let me know what you think.
And then, of course, we culminate our week with Community Beacon, which is what you're looking at now, what you're watching now. So we appreciate you all for checking in on Community Beacon. Shouts out to Beethoven at Podcast Plus. He's doing a lot of different things. I'm seeing him ramp up his content as well. So go check out Beethoven Francois, The Male Perspective on YouTube. I think there's about 3 or 4 episodes on there, and I think he's working on some things to get more dropped. Let's get into it. Let's get into it.
I love it. So last week, y'all, we were talking about work-life balance, and we started from the ground up. You know, the first question that we started asking Mike was like, you know, how long has he been an entrepreneur? How long has he been running his own business and that type of stuff? And it just blossomed into this great conversation where we started to talk about 2 main things, right? One of the main things was that he did the research. Doing the research makes a difference. You got to have knowledge about what you're doing. You all know there's a few episodes back where I gave you guys the 5 different things that you need to consider whenever starting a business. And Mike hit on 2 of them just last week. One of them was knowledge and the other one was investment. You know, and he made a great point. And I meant to do it in the recap last week, but I'll do it right now. He said the lack of capital is the reason why people go out of business, you know, and the statistics are that the average business that's just opened up is out of business within 24 months. And a black run business, thank you, baby. A black run business is out of business within 18 months. So, you know, you just need to think about these things before you even step in. Mike also said that, you know, when it came down to knowledge, he started to look at demographics, and then he skillfully started to think about price point, which I think it was really genius the way that he opened up the door about who he wanted to work with, how much they were going to spend, and then he matched his capital to be able to enter into that arena with great successes. So these are all really, really wise things that he was doing like 20 years ago, right? I mean, this guy is, I told you all he was a business model. He is. And he's also a model, an example of it. So I'm ready to get in there. He left off with the last thing, selling the sizzle, not the steak, being around people with bravado. was one of the things that helped him to scale his mindset. So, let's start off right there. I want to get into this Alex Hormozi question that I left off on the last one, but just let's start off right there, Mike. Being around people with bravado, it sounds to me about you got to get in the right circles of individual. Can you open that door for us?
Yeah, absolutely. There's someone who talks about if you're the smartest person in the room, that you're more than likely doing yourself a disservice. That's how I'm going to say it. If you are always the smartest person in the room, if you're always the biggest fish in the pond, more than likely you're doing yourself a disservice. So I think it's very important that we get around people who are doing definitely as well and even better than. To people who you can ask questions, you can open it up to. I had a little bit of time to really think also about that question in regards to the bravado of people that I was around. And what I've noticed is that you have to have a really extreme way about yourself, like a certain and stable mindset and identity of yourself. And we kind of spoke about this when we were talking about surviving and thriving in regards to your worth, a sense of self-worth. And so I definitely want to attribute that to my parents and my grandparents, who actually gave me that sense of self-worth, that when I was in places that I didn't necessarily know the answer to, I didn't back down because I knew that they were just like me and I could actually learn as much as as whatever there was they were putting down. And people like to see that. People like to know that, especially people who are successful, they love to give information back to people who they know will eventually utilize it.
I like that, man. I like that. And I definitely want to say shout out to your mom and dad who led that way. And that takes me back right there too, because like I contribute a lot of what I have also from my mother, and even like my entrepreneurial spirit, that all definitely comes from my mother, and seeing her traverse the entrepreneurial realm, from my, actually it was a little bit older for me, it was my late teens, early 20s that my mother just began to build an empire. And she has all of the skills that are necessary to continue to build whatever she desires. The intellect, the mindset, the drive, the determination, the vision. She's got all of those really good qualities that are necessary for someone to be able to do that. I did look it up. So the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room quote. So I guess it was Confucius, from Confucius all the way to Jack Welch. There's a lot of people that have been attributed with that. But I definitely take a lot to that. We've talked about this before. Like if you grew up on the streets and the one kid that kind of like taught you how to do things on the corner or something like that, that may not be everybody's story, but after a few years, you realize that you want to do something else with your lifestyle, and you go back to that same corner and they're still on the street. The only thing that's changed is they're bigger and older. You know what I mean? And so it's like, you got to change circles if you want to get somewhere, wherever you desire to get. You're going to have to learn to mingle with the people that do whatever that is.
Right. Absolutely.
So here's the next question then for you, Mike. You were mentioning about the capital, and I wanted to dig into that a little bit from a different point of view. Not to derail anything you said, because I agree with it 100%, but to add another aspect of it and another mindset, or to open up the mindset. Before we got off of the last show, Mike showed up the second book from Alex Hormozi, and I just love his story. He's told his story so many times, and I'm not going to tell the whole thing, but I just want to give a little bit of it. Alex Hormozi was like in gyms, training people and stuff like that. And he ended up getting into business, and he started to expand. There came a point in time when everybody who was about to pay him was like, we can't pay you anymore. And he had bet his entire game. He had risked his entire business based off of the salary or the income that he was going to receive from these various individuals. And so what ended up happening was he got that last payment, which was just enough to pay his partner or to eat. And he decided to pay his partner. So he paid his partner out, and he was left with $1,000 inside of his bank account and with a debit card that was worth $100,000, if I got the story correctly. And then, he was just in desperation because everything that he knew was going to collapse. And the people that he may or may not have owed, they were going, he was going to have to pay them. And so this was the act right then of like, what do I do next? Thank God the circles that he was with, his girlfriend had a great mindset. And when he went to her, instead of her pushing him down, she lifted him up. And because of the faith that she had in him, she instilled just enough of a spark for him to do something crazy that had it not been the demise of his business, maybe Alex Hormozi may not even be who we know him to be today. But here's my question is, people looking at that example from the outside looking in may say, oh, well, all I need to do is just get credit and I can open up my business based off of credit. That's not the same thing as capital. It's not, there was something that Alex Hormozi had, in his drive, in his mindset, in his intellect that really took him to a new spot, but just getting the credit. So you talked about the capital, having enough capital versus having credit, which I don't want to say credit can't work it, but what is the magic ingredient, or what is your thought process on how to traverse that grounds, whether you have the capital or don't have the capital and you still want to make it?
I think, brother, the stats speak for themselves. I think over the last couple of years, we've seen this huge uptick of entrepreneurs who know how to maneuver the actual credit side of the business. Oh, you can do this and we'll give you business credit on this side, and it's $100,000 here and 20. And I'm not saying that doesn't work. I kept on looking into these different models, and I'm like, well, where's the income coming in? Like, you got, like, income has to play a part at some point in time. You got $100,000 worth of credit, or you can get $100,000 worth of credit. You need to, how are you going to make income from that $100,000 worth of credit? And I think there's only a certain, like, there's a key amount of people who have that type of mentality. And it's really, I think that's hustling, but I don't want to have that way of being able to maneuver with the credit like that. And being able to know how to take it here and move it here and then flip it this way. And it's just always happening, as opposed to building a solid business, solving a problem, being able to charge for solving that problem, being able to charge more than what it takes for you to actually solve that problem. That's where you're going to get your profit out of. That's a solid business. It's based on just foundational thinking. There's not too, I mean, you're not going to go to many different places and that it changes. You know what I mean? You can do that here. You can do that in Jamaica. You can do that in France. You can do that all these places that you don't necessarily have to, that there's the credit system is not similar to what's going on in America's credit system. And then with the credit system, you always got to stay one step ahead, right? Like, I heard a guy who figured out some kind of way to have an Apple card, and he was doing this for a certain amount of time, and he did it so much that Apple changed their whole way that they gave credit out because of what was going on. So which is, I guess it's essentially it's credit arbitrage or something like that. Just base your business on sound business practices and models. That's it. Solve a problem. The problem that you solve should cost you less to actually be able to solve that problem than what you charge someone. Figure out who's the demographic you're going to go after. Try to go after a demographic that has the money, or that this problem solves, makes it really convenient for them. Whatever it is. This is just business 101. So how do you do that? Hopefully I answered your question, but I do understand the credit part of it. I would just say be wary, because even credit in itself, like it's not, what is it, 20 to 30 years old. I was just at a lending conference with a lender. Actually, a lender actually had a conference, and he spoke about the way that our credit process works now. Just even the numbers and how we base it it started in like the 90s. So this is more so strategy and tactics as opposed to principles. I like to see people base their business on principles. It looks all slick with these credit people, but you know, you got to be able to keep up with it. Is my thought process on it, in my experience.
Yeah, man, I love that. I love that, and I love the whole part about just solve the problem, which by definition is just establishing a process that mitigates and removes obstacles currently preventing somebody from reaching their strategic goals. So I love that, and I love the essence of that. And just stealing a little bit of what you said from the last episode, where you were talking about you were talking about the price point. So I think that when it comes down to somebody who wants to try to build their business off of credit, you just got to make sure that you have the appropriate demographics to be able to afford the higher price point. Because like you were just about to get into the percentages of the interest, you know, how much more will you have to pay, or how much more do you have to make off of whatever your product is or whatever your service is in order to cover the expense of that credit, the expense of the business, which could be as much as, you know, building, you know, the housing, the employees, the product, you know, your own personal here and there, and then to pay yourself because you need to have income. So those are all good things to consider. And I think that, so how does this all build up into the work life? You know, it's like, well, I feel like these foundational things are really, if we don't capture this understanding early on in the business, then they become bad habits in the long term of our business and cause us stress and dysfunction. And eventually it'll cause us the desire to repeal business altogether. Like I don't want to have nothing to do with business. I tried that once before. It ain't for me. I just W4 me all, not W4, W2.
Yeah,
W2 me all the way, W4, W2 me all the way. What's your thoughts on that?
Listen, very unpopular opinion. 95% of people in business don't belong in business. Entrepreneurship all of a sudden became a very, and rightfully so, right time, right place. It just seemed like it's the time. A lot of people don't need to be in business. I would say don't do it. I think it takes a lot. It's not what it's made to be seen like. And so you do have because the bad habits, the misalignment of your values, the stress, the not having the proper models to model it off of, not having the proper information. A lot of these, I think 95% most people do not need to be in business. I think a lot of people will be great number twos. They be great number threes, probably number 15s, number 20s. If you can get behind a great business CEO, business person, entrepreneur who's awesome at it and is willing to go that extra mile to do it. But there's let's get back to that work-life balance where we say 85, what was it? After 18 months, the majority of businesses, you go out of business. There's a reason for that. It's a lot more involved than just, I'm just out here and I'm starting a business. You will be ran rugged. You can essentially be ran rugged. To be honest with you, brother, I just say a lot of people don't need to be in business. It's the cool thing now. You want to be a boss. You want to be this. We don't understand. I think oftentimes we don't understand the boss is the one you got to serve everybody. The Alex Hormozi story that you spoke about, this guy had to come up with, I think it was close to $100,000 just to pay his sales team. And at the end of that's when he took a picture of his bank account. I think it was $1,000 or $1,600 that was in there because he had just enough money, $100,000, to make payroll. He was stressed out about making payroll. Some people who aren't in business for the long term or longevity of it would have made that money and would have told people, "Hey, I'm bankrupt. I'm out of business. I can give you half of what I owe you." Because it's easy, right? You could easily say, "Listen, I got 90 grand. I got this influx of cash in, 100,000. I owe 100. I got 101,000 in my account. I owe payroll 100,000. I can easily go to them and say, "Listen, guys, the business is bankrupt. I'll give you all half of what I owe you. I'll give you 50 grand. I'll figure out the 50 grand goes to payroll, and I can run off with the 50 grand." You understand what I mean? So it's like we have to. That's why his story got to where it is. I would imagine, because part of his story as well is that his business partner took all of his money.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Robbins has a story. Right before he went on to stage, the Tony Robbins, he checked his account. One of his business partners or accountants took all his money. He was broke. This guy was on the road 300 days out of the year. Checked his account before he went on the stage and was like, "You have nothing." And he still has to do he still goes on stage. These are the stories we hear. We don't hear about stories where you look in your account and it's down to zero, and or like Tony Robbins, and he's like, "I'm done. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. This person just ran off with this business partner took off with my money, and I'm finished." We don't hear about those stories, but those stories happen a lot, right? So I think it's important that we take these stories that we're hearing are people who are into the perseverance and resilience, and not everyone has that. Not everyone is willing to go that far with it, especially like say you got a family. You look at your family, you're like, "Man, am I going to pay my guys, my sales guys, or am I going to feed my family?" These are the type of questions that people answer, and some people are like, sales guys don't get paid, and businesses go out of business more often than we think and file for bankruptcy, and people don't get their paycheck. It happens all the time.
That's beautiful. I mean, so true. And I think it's perfect right there, just the way you left that off, because like one of my lasting thoughts off of what you're saying there is like the perseverance and resilience of an individual that's like that. What type of spouse do they have to have?
I love it. That's a great question. That's a great question.
I want to leave it open just like that. I don't want to get any deeper into it. What type of spouse do you believe that somebody, who wants to, and I'm not talking about the finished product, because many people want the finished product, Amen. But the unfinished product, the person that has the perseverance, the resilience, they got the determination, they got the mindset, but they're missing those key or core pieces that actually make the clock tick.
You got it. Let's give a shout out to all the spouses that supported, that really stuck in it for the other person who's building the business. Like to actually believe in that and actually to trust in the person. Alex Hormozi talks about it. In his book about Layla, who he came and he says she's noticed the look on his face, and she said, "You know what? I'm gonna stick it out with you." Like that, yeah. That I can't even imagine. That's some foundational stuff right there. I think oftentimes a lot of people aren't as successful as they are because they don't have that support, that kind of support. Imagine, and if you do have this type of support, you have to show your appreciation for it. You know what I mean? Anyone who's willing to stick with you through something like that. Hey, I lost $100,000. You know what I mean? Like this is what and I forget the word she said to him, but he talks about it all the time. It's unimaginable. I mean, I think that support system, having a support system that's locked in with you, that build trust in your vision and your ability to do what it is that you say you're going to do, or give you a chance to face those challenges, you can't. That's irreplaceable. You can't. It's not even worth. You can't even put a price tag on that.
Yeah, I agree, man. So like I know a billionaire, Rich Dolly, right? And so like every time that I've met him, or we're not like so close. I mean, there's a few pictures of him and I here or there, but anyway, like part of his story was living in a trailer with his wife Cindy, and he got into business, financial business, and the only thing that he wanted to do was buy her a couch.
Come on.
That was it.
Yeah.
He felt like she deserved to have a new couch. And so he was willing to jump into business where he had no idea what he was doing. And the crazy part about it is, like you're talking about these stories, is that in his story, the guy that brought him into the business did above and beyond to get him into the business. I mean, like, he called him up and he's like, oh, yeah, of course he's busy. He's working. He's trying to get a couch.
Couch.
He's trying to get his wife a couch. He doesn't have time for somebody who's talking about the possibility of running their own business. He just wants to get a couch. And finally, he's like, listen, I got the documents. I'm in the neighborhood. Now, this I found to be, it was a lie. The guy was not in the neighborhood. He was 2 hours away from him. He told Rich that he was in the neighborhood, that he was going to drop it off, and all he needed to do was sign it. And so because Rich felt like he was actually in the neighborhood, he said, okay. So he drove 2 hours to go drop this document off at this man's house. And then after that, he had to call him back and he had to make sure that he signed it. And of course, he's 2 hours away. So he had to drive another 2 hours again to go back and pick it up. So he did 4 hours one way to drop it off, 4 hours another way to get it back. And then the man actually left the business. And I mean, he would be right now, he'd be like a mega billionaire. He'd be like a deca-billionaire just because Rich is a billionaire and he'd be making money off of him. But needless to say, what it takes to actually get from here to there is like, it's tremendous when it comes down to the mindset. So when you say spousal support, you made me think about, Cindy Thaly, who, when Rich was like, this is it, she was like, no, you got it. Or the Greg Capps, when Greg Capp, who's also 100, 700, $800 million type of man, who also, is sitting in the same type of not Greg Capp, but Monty Home. He wrote the book. I think it's called What It Takes.
Oh, did it?
I think he might have written that book. No, Expect to Win. Expect to Win. He wrote the book Expect to Win. That's a hard one to find because there's some other people that wrote it. But anyway, you're talking about these spouses like Layla who stood in the gap. So what would be your advice to the spouses out there today that
you need to give the
I like this. My man just started laughing and he started looking at me sideways.
I'm gonna flip it on. Listen, hey, you tell me, brother. You tell me, what is the advice that you would have for spouses that are standing in the gap? I can't answer that one.
Yeah, I mean, so I feel like you probably could from your own perspective and point of view. I think we all can, but I know one thing's for sure is that if a man marries a woman, then, once they become one, they are one, So if anything, from the ground level up, when Mike was talking about you need to check your demographics, you need to check your price point. I think if you're married, you need to check to make sure your husband or wife is ready to venture on into this arena. And then you need to keep checking with them.
I agree with you 1,000%. I'm gonna go a little bit further for some people, for some people as well. I think we need to actually gauge the people that we're with. I think that there's $100,000 spouses, there's $500,000 spouses, there's $1 million spouses, $10 million spouses, and I just want to use money as a tangible way of explaining this. I think Barack Obama could not have made it with a lot of different people, but he had Michelle. Michelle was able to sit in there and say, hey, this guy is away all the time, even before his presidential is hopeful, even when he was just becoming a senator. Can you imagine how much traveling he had to do, etc.? Some people can't take that. And you need to look at your significant other and say, well, are they able to take that? Some people can't take their husbands being away. You know what I mean? So you need to have that figured out. Some people need your support, your mental. So we really got to engage and look at your person and say, especially if you're married, because I'm one of those people that don't believe in divorce, whatever weight that carries. If you don't believe in it, look at the person that you're with, and let's say that you plan on even being at this level of whatever it is. You claim you're a $10 million person, $20 million, whatever number it is. When you're looking, you need to do your due diligence on your spouse as well. Is this person able to sit in there with me and be honest about it? If you're married, you need to be honest about it. And then from that point on, not to say that people can't change, but I think that comes with over communication and building that trust. And we had an episode on trust a while back. So really over communicating with the person that you're with, really bringing them along, really painting that picture of the vision, and then doing what it is that you say that it's going to do. And this goes for either side, because you do have some women who are, very ambitious and want to move in a certain direction. So you need to talk to your husband and say the same thing. Listen, I'm not one of those people that wants to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom with the kids. I want to go out here and blaze my path. And then your husband should be like, okay, well, cool. I'm okay with still being a man and taking on these roles between the two of us, as long as, but that communication has to be there. And that trust.
Or no, I'm not okay with sitting.
Oh, yeah.
But, maybe, but what's the middle grounds?
Right.
Where, hey, listen, your mom can watch, my mom can watch, or we can have someone come in. You know what? I intend on running the business through the house, whatever. But it's just what Mike was saying, over communicating that thing and coming up with a game plan that works for the two and not for the one. Whenever we make a game plan that works for the one, we leave the other person out. And the minute we leave the other person out, we end up with stresses. And now and so this is how we're digging into work-life balance, right there.
Yeah. So let's because I know time is a factor right now, brother. So so now I get a chance to talk to you about that side of the thing, work-life balance, on the next episode, when we come back and we start talking about significant others, spouses, the communication, the trust, especially when you're changing and growing and maybe the trajectory may have changed. I think that'll be an awesome show. I'm going to be the interviewer next time, so I'm excited about it. I'm going to be interviewing that guy on the other side of the screen. And just a quick listen, there's some of you all who are in relationships now where it hasn't reached that point. There might not be any kids involved. Marriage is not involved. That brother on the other side of the screen is a great person to go talk to about you, and that's a part of your due diligence in picking a spouse, is to find someone who's been in it 20 plus years of marriage, that's been there, that can see it, and that can actually give you some guidance based upon what he sees. Because sometimes, they say love is blind. We can't see the forest through the trees. We lose a lot of resources when we're in love. We lose a lot of our resources. You need that outside person, especially if we want to, which I think is important. Families are important. If we start, and families are probably one of the biggest contributors to actually obtaining wealth. Wealth is families. I don't care where you go back. That's principally, foundationally it. Your belief system has to include families. Otherwise, you are on a very steep incline. So we will definitely shoot that episode next time. We appreciate any last closing words, brother, before we log off?
Good, man. Let's go.
All right, perfect. Appreciate you guys. We will see you next week. Thanks.